Welcome to Young Asia Television.
Presented by the National Science Foundation of Sri Lanka.
It may not be so noticeable, but our oceans are rising at an alarming rate, posing a threat to lives, livelihoods, and entire ecosystems. The two major causes for global sea level rise are thermal expansion caused by the warming of the oceans and the loss of land-based ice such as glaciers and polar ice caps. What is causing the world to heat up? How is it affecting us? And what must we do about it? Today's program will answer these and many other questions relating to climate change, which is one of the biggest issues facing our world today.
ගහකොළ මල් සුසැදී පනනල ඇත සුරැකී ජීවිතයේ විදුනන අත්තර ගත යුත්තේ අවනි පැයුම් විහිවිය යුත්තේ සොබාදහම් සුරැකිය යුත්තේ අප සම නිරෝගී විය යුත්තේ ජීවිතයේ මේ සියලු රහස් දැනුවත් විය යුත්තේ විද්‍යාවෙන් තේරුම්ගෙන ලෝකය ජීවත් විය යුත්තේ
මේ මඩ
What is meant by climate? And what impact can its variability have on us? Climate is often confused with weather, which is not the same. Let's begin today's program by examining the differences between climate and weather, as it's important to understand these phenomena and how they're connected to one another.
Weather is what the forecasters on the TV news predict each day. They tell people about the temperature, cloudiness, humidity, and whether a storm is likely in the next few days. Weather is the mix of events that happens each day in our atmosphere, and weather is not the same everywhere. It may be hot and sunny in one part of the world, but freezing and snowy in another. While the weather can change in just a few hours, climate takes a longer period to change.
At least you have to have 30 years of record in order to talk about climate.
Although climate is something we think of in a long range, today our climate has begun to change much faster than it's healthy for the planet and all its living beings. While there are external factors behind climate change caused by slight changes in the tilt and orbit of the Earth, there are also other natural processes such as volcanic eruptions which release an enormous amount of energy and pollutants into the Earth's atmosphere. While such factors have an impact on the climate, they seem relatively insignificant when compared to the threats posed to the climate by humans, particularly over the past century. Today, there is overwhelming scientific evidence to show that climate change is mainly caused by human activity. The burning of fossil fuels for transportation and energy generation releases a large volume of carbon dioxide and other emissions into the Earth's atmosphere. Forests help address climate change by reducing the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, by absorbing carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen back into the air. Unfortunately, our forest cover is rapidly depleting. The cutting down, as well as the burning of forests for land reuse, is adding further to the increase of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Once released, carbon dioxide and other emissions become trapped in the upper atmosphere, resulting in the greenhouse effect, which causes global warming that leads to climate change.
The same principle that is in the greenhouse applies in the atmosphere. Now we know the solar energy is high energy radiation, including light, passes through the atmosphere without any problem to the Earth's surface. Then Earth's surface is heated up. Then Earth in turn emits radiation. Infrared radiation is absorbed by these greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane and so on. Now by absorbing they retain this energy without letting it go out of the atmosphere. And if you have more of these gases in the atmosphere, more energy will be trapped, absorbed, and therefore the temperature is increased due to this effect. We understand very clearly the man-made influences change in the climate. Now this was taken up by the world body UNEP, United Nations Environment Programme, as back as 1980s, and in 1988 World Meteorological Organization in association with UNEP set up a intergovernmental panel on climate change, which is now called IPCC. Now it has been shown by IPCC that prior to the industrial revolution, the carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere was 270 parts per million. Today it is 390 parts per million. Now it is projected to increase, if you go as it is, to about 540 parts million to 940 parts per million. That is going to be double or triple. If the carbon dioxide concentration go beyond 450 parts per million, the global temperature will rise more than 2 degrees from now. So that is going to be a disastrous situation. Beyond 2 degrees centigrade means the Earth atmosphere system go to a situation where it will never return back. So that is the concern. The world has to get together and prevent global warming so that the climate will not change beyond a certain limit that the world can live with.
Rising temperatures have resulted in climate variabilities and extreme climatic events. These often lead to catastrophic natural disasters, which are increasing in frequency and are making news headlines all across the world.
The crisis in northern India. Officials say more than 1,000 people have been killed in flooding and landslides.
මේ කාලගුණ තත්ත්වයක් සමග අකුණුසර අවදානමද පවතිනවා. ඊයේ පස්වරුවේ කුණ්ඩසාලේ නිවසකට අකුණුසර වැදුනත් කිසිවකු නිවසේ නොසිටීම නිසා ජීවිත හානි සිදු වූයේ නැහැ.
Flash floods have left more than 160 people dead and stranded, and even more without food or shelter in Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Here last night, a powerful cyclone was making landfall on the east coast of India.
Violent seas and winds gusting up to 150 miles per hour.
Cyclone Pylene has left a trail of destruction.
Phelan damaged more than 10,000 houses, killing at least 23 people.
Concerned over increased greenhouse gas emissions and its impact on the global climate, world leaders and other stakeholders have come together on numerous occasions to determine what must be done to address the situation. The setting up of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, in 1988, as well as the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, adopted in 1992, and the Kyoto Protocol linked to it, are among the key commitments made on an international level to reduce or control emission levels. However, the desired impact has so far not been achieved, despite these agreements being morally and legally binding.
Most of this emission comes from the developed world. For example, in 1990, if you take the statistics, US alone put over 36 point some percentage of the total, and EU comes second, Russia comes next, and so on. Developed world has emitted so much. And now what has happened, in order to prevent, if you want to take action, we will have to reduce emission. That is what UNFCCC is saying. And through that process, the Kyoto Protocol is developed, and Kyoto Protocol first phase was from 2008 to 2012. Now, the agreement was that at least 5% of the emission in 1990 level has to be reduced or controlled during this first phase of the Kyoto Protocol. Looking back, it is over now, and it has not materialized. Unfortunately, USA, for example, did not sign the Kyoto Protocol. They are party to the UNFCCC. Yes, major emitter is not a party to the Kyoto Protocol. So it is obvious that it is not going to be successful. And of course, there are other countries who have not fulfilled their agreed requirement, and therefore it is not successful at this stage. Now, of course, the second phase was negotiated, and unfortunately, it took such a long time. Until the 2012 was over, there was no agreement.
Both big and small nations have common yet differentiated responsibilities towards taking action on climate change, which will continue to affect developing countries the most by threatening food security and creating or worsening already existing socio-economic problems. Let's find out how such changes have affected Sri Lanka and what can be done to address this situation.
පේනවා ලොකු විපර්යාසයක් සිදුවමින් පවතිනවා කියලා දේශගුණේ.
මම හිතන්නේ අපේ වැඩ හින්දාම තමයි වෙනස් වෙන්නේ නැතුව වෙන හේතුවක් ඉඳන් නෙමෙයි අපේ වැඩ අපි කරන කියන දේවල් හින්දා අපේ තාක්ෂණයේ දියුණුවත් එක්ක වෙන ප්‍රශ්නයක් තමයි මේ.
පුද්ගලයා පුරුදු වෙලා නැහැ හිතන්න පරිසරය ගැනවත් අනිත් කෙනා ගැනවත් නැතුව තමන්ගේ අවශ්‍යතා ඉටු කර ගන්නවා. එතෙන්දි වෙලා තියෙන්නේ මේ පරිසරයේ අසමතුලිතතාවයකට පත් වෙලා තියෙනවා.
Situated in Colombo, the Department of Meteorology is the national authority in providing weather and climate-related services to government agencies, the private sector, and the general public. According to some research conducted using available long-term data, the Department of Meteorology has noted that there is an increase in the maximum air temperature during the daytime and of the minimum temperature during the nighttime, with some yearly fluctuations. These studies have shown that the increase of the minimum nighttime air temperature is significantly higher than the increase of the maximum daytime air temperature. Findings also show that there is a slight decrease in the total annual rainfall for the whole country. However, year-to-year fluctuation is reportedly high. It has also been noted that since 1950, there have been years with significantly below normal rainfall, which has resulted in drought conditions which have been noticeable over the recent years. Thunder and lightning is a natural disaster, and according to records, the annual number of days with thunder activity have increased, especially in the Colombo region in the western province. The annual number of thunder days fluctuates between 60 and 140, and there is a gradual increase of the days in recent years.
Whether we like it or not, the world is, world climate is changing, and therefore we'll have to survive or adapt to the situation. We cannot do much on the emission reduction or the mitigation side. Our focus mainly should be on the adaptation side, because according to the reports, the most disastrous problems are occurring in the tropical regions. Most developing and poor countries are affected as compared to other countries. Of course, they have if you are rich, you have means of surviving and technology development, various other things are there. But if you are poor and if you are affected, only thing is you will have to see how you can adapt and survive. In Sri Lanka, if you look at our records, our normal patterns have changed. For example, the weather pattern, the rainfall pattern has changed, and that will affect our agriculture and our domestic water usage. It is predicted that the wet zone or the southwest quarter of the island will have more rain with the climate change. Then, for example, we have to have a variety of paddy that will stand at least for 1 or 2 weeks underwater. If there is a failure in our rainfall pattern, we may have to see how we manage our energy supply, energy generation, right. That is why I say maybe we need to switch on to alternative energy, maybe solar, wind and so on. This problem has to get into the planning process of the country. So, the planning should be taking into consideration the future scenario. Now, one other point I will highlight here is that now we said sea level will go up. Now, we can draw a contour and see what will happen to our land. You can see that in the eastern side, low-lying areas, we are having paddy cultivation. Now, if the sea level goes up, salt water intrusion will ruin that, right, and we won't be able to cultivate in that area. Therefore, we have to see, maybe we have to have a variety which resist the salt water to some extent, or we have to move these areas in the planning process to some other areas to cultivate. And also in the western side, okay, we have all the infrastructure, well developed areas, cities, hotels. Our tourism is mainly in those areas, and that will be affected. And therefore, we need to have a plan to move these industries, cities, maybe even the roads to a safer area. So, it is not going to happen in tomorrow or day after tomorrow, but long term. So, long term planning has to consider these changes that are taking place. So, the planning is very essential, otherwise we will be in real trouble in time to come.
Being a developing island nation subject to tropical climate patterns, Sri Lanka is highly vulnerable to climate change impacts. Extreme weather events such as high-intensity rainfall followed by flash floods and landslides, and extended dry periods resulting in water scarcity are now becoming common occurrences in Sri Lanka. The full impact of such developments is still under study by scientists, but what is clear is the need to take adaptive measures to build resilience of the country to face the adverse impacts of climate change.
We at the NSF take this climate change issue a serious problem for the country, and it is good if we can have a predictive capability, accurate prediction, so that at least the planning process, the adaptive measures can be looked at, worked out in the way the climate is changing in this country. So, for that purpose, we have already established a thematic working group on climate change and natural disasters. There, we are planning to bring in our academics, our researchers, all the other stakeholders such as Disaster Management Center, Med Department, and pool all these brains together and try to develop a model, a predictability, accurate prediction for the future, at least on a seasonal or annual basis. Now, doing that, we may be able to see the future and adaptive measures can be taken. Maybe it is in the agriculture field, maybe energy generation, maybe fisheries sector, or even health sector. So, it is something that we need to predict beforehand, so that the planners and the policy makers will take the appropriate decision at the correct time.
As you know, climate change is happening as we speak. The world needs to act now before irreversible changes occur to our climate system. It's unlikely that climate change can be stopped entirely. However, a greater commitment to adopt low-emission strategies and environmentally friendly practices and technologies will help slow down the effects of climate change and give our ecosystems a chance to stabilize and gradually recover. I'll leave you with some thoughts on how this can be done. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
තියෙන එකම විසඳුම තමයි ඉතින් ස්වභාවික පරිසරයේ ශාකවවල ආරක්ෂා කරගන්න. එතකොට තමයි අපිටින් අපිට සිසිලසක් දැනෙන්නේ.
කුචිකාර්මික පැත්තට නැඹුරු වෙලා නැවත ගස්කොළන් වගා කිරීමක් කරලා දිගු කාලීන සැලසුම මේකට අවශ්‍යයි.
පුළුවන් තරම් පෙට්‍රෝලියම් ගෑස් යූස් කරන එක නවත්තලා හිටන්. පුළුවන් තරම් ඊට වඩා ඕල්ටර්නේටිව් නේචර් පේන් ස්වභාවික දේවල් පාවිච්චි කරන්න ගියොත් හොඳයි කියලා අපි හිතනවා. කර්මාන්ත ශාලා එහෙම තව මේ ඒ කියන්නේ මේ හොඳ තත්වයකින් ගෙනියන්න ඕනේ විමෝචනය එහෙම අඩු කරලා.
වර්තමානයේ අය තමන් ගැන හිතන මිසක පරිසරය ගැන හිතන්නේ නැති නිසා ඒගොල්ලන්ට පුරුදු කරන්න ඕන පුංචි කාලේ ඉඳලම අපිට පරිසරයෙන් අපි ලබන ප්‍රයෝජන වගේම පරිසරයටත් අපි යම්කිසි අපි මෙහෙවරක් කර යුතුයි කියන එක.
නීතිමය පැත්තෙන් ඔය වනයේට වෙන හානිය වගේ දේවල් වළක්වා ගන්න පුළුවන් මැදිහත් වීම නීතිමය අතින් ගන්න පුළුවන් ක්‍රියාමාර්ග හරියාකාරයෙන් ගන්නවා නම් මම හිතනවා මීට වඩා තත්යකට රැක ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා මම හිතනවා යම්කිසි මට්ටමකට.
Basically, we all know that the climate change is happening and we are affected as a country. So therefore, what we can do, as I said before, the mitigation option or the reduction of emission is not a big thing for us because we don't emit too much. However, we have to adapt. So therefore, what we have to do is see the ways that we can emit less and live with our resources. Basically, if you are thinking of the way that we emit carbon dioxide now is mainly in the energy production and transport sector. In order to avoid that, only way is that we look for renewable alternative energy resources. The alternative renewable resources in this country, we can think of mainly the solar energy. For example, we 365 days we get the sun, overhead sun, and therefore that resource is freely available for us. Then the wind energy, for example, it is available. Of course, there are places where it's plenty, and we can look for the places where we should set up windmills. And then, of course, biomass can be used in various other things. Even today, the total energy, if you take, the biomass is mostly used, maybe close to 60 to 70% of the country's energy use is biomass, and therefore we can use biomass even to generate electricity. That is. Then of course there are other ways. We can use the ocean energy, wave energy, and there is something called OTEC, ocean thermal energy conversion, and those are in the long run we need to develop. At once we can think of solar and wind is freely available. Only thing is that the initial investment is little high, but things are improving, the technology is developing, efficiency is improving, and therefore if you look for that, we may be able to leave ourselves away from the unsustainable, unrenewable energy which is not going to last for a long time, and therefore we need to anyway look for this alternative. Not only us, whole world has to look in that direction.
ශීතපතයනම් මන්දාකිනියේ නිල් පැහැයෙන් හැඩවූ එකමලුවක් ඇත්තේ ගහකොළ මල් සුසැදී පනනල ඇත සුරැකී ජීවිතයේ